From fabulous Las Vegas, Nevada, this is Pod Therapy. Real people, real problems, and real therapists. You can submit your questions anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. Several of our listeners have informed us that when seeing Jim and I in our Kickstarter video, they realized they had had our faces and voices mixed up this whole time. So let's settle this once and for all. Jim is the white guy with the beard that always wears his glasses. I'm the white guy with the beard that occasionally wears his glasses. That should settle the confusion.
There it is.
And now, broadcasting from the churn, that guy's Dr. Jim Jobin. I'm Nick Tangeman. It's time for some pod therapy.
It's weird that your voice is coming out of my mouth. It's so weird.
How do you do it?
How are you doing this? This ventriloquism thing. You're getting really good at it.
Yeah.
That's really funny.
So yeah, that's like the number one thing that the number one comment that people say when they see our videos.
I've never seen anybody get it right. But I put us in picture order according to the voices that you hear. You hear your voice first and mine second. Yeah. And you're the first picture on the left.
Yep.
And on the picture on the right. Do people get you guys confused, Jacob?
Oh, yeah.
That does happen whenever they meet you in person?
Yeah.
You guys are also like really, there's a lot of your media, it's like really visual.
Right. Well, and part of the reason we started doing that was people started saying like, oh, I saw this picture and this picture I had of you in my mind was not even remotely similar to what you actually look like.
So you wanted to get those expectations down.
Exactly.
Was that a Wayne's World 2 where they were going to meet the DJ? And they're like, oh, his voice, it's so sensual. He's just got to be this really attractive guy.
Yeah.
And this really attractive guy comes out, and they're like, oh, hey, it's nice to meet you. And it's like, oh, but I'm not so-and-so.
Oh.
And then this other little short guy comes out, and he's wearing like this sweatsuit.
Yeah, that's the DJ. Yeah.
You don't remember that part?
No, I never saw Wayne's World 2.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's the one that has Aerosmith in it.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. I did like Wayne's World 1.
Yeah. No, you should see it.
But that's interesting. Yeah. Also, Jacob, what is the deal with the 3 accounts that are same?
What's the deal?
What's the deal with airline? What's the deal with the 3 accounts that are like same picture of Jacob every day and like same picture of Paul every day?
You've just summed them up.
But what is that? Like somebody did that.
Scoops just do that.
Okay. I didn't know if that was like a joke that was made and then somebody created it. It just happened.
It's their joke.
Yeah.
It just keeps showing up.
Yeah.
Okay.
The first time I ever saw that was, I think it was a Facebook page, and it was the same picture of, what's the guy's? Jeff Goldblum.
Oh, okay.
He had one. And it had like
picture of Jeff.
Millions of followers.
That's
it was
funny.
It was just the same picture of Jeff Goldblum every day.
That's hilarious.
It was just posted.
Yeah. I actually subscribed to all 3 of those Twitters. So,
good.
Yeah.
I think I subscribed to same picture Jacob and same picture Paul. I don't think I subscribed to same picture Matt.
What's that about? This is Pod Therapy. Let's go ahead and get started.
Yeah. Why don't we talk about it?
I guess I see Matt enough.
Yeah, you probably do. Jeez, man. I never do see Matt. Anytime we're coming and going, I always see, obviously we see Jacob, but I see Paul. We saw Paul today.
Matt scoots out fast on Sundays.
Okay,
because
he
gets over
pen.
to Sunday school.
Oh, okay, yeah, he's got pen. Oh, he does that right after ICS?
Yep.
Oh, okay, that explains it.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, there it is. So he's not just avoiding us.
Not just that.
Might
no.
be both.
Just avoiding us.
Yeah.
All right. Well, speaking of people who have rejected my affections, let's talk about the Coolidge effect, as was teased last week. So this is a true story from the annals of psychology history. All right. So there's this thing that is called the Coolidge effect, okay? But before I describe what the sexual phenomena is called the Coolidge effect, I will first begin with the story, which now gives it its name, okay? So according to history, and I don't know if this is apocryphal or whatever, but it's in some textbook somewhere, President of the United States, Calvin Coolidge.
It does actually have to do with Calvin Coolidge?
Actually Calvin Coolidge.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh.
Peep this. All right, so here's what happened.
We are now suddenly interested.
Yeah, it's weird. You guys are both looking at me. This is like the first time it's ever happened.
We have now set down our phones.
Yeah, okay.
Go ahead.
Here's the story.
No, I'm Googling the Coolidge effect.
Don't you look into it. So Calvin Coolidge he's I think he's campaigning for re-election, and he's got his wife with him. And the two of them go to a farm somewhere in the United States. And so the farm is very large, and the farmer and his assistants are there, and they're there to basically take a tour, and the newspapers are there and all that stuff. And so they split the couple up. So Calvin and his wife split up to both go see different sections of it or whatever. So Mrs. Coolidge is taken to this area where they have the hen house. And there's this one rooster, right? And she looks at, this rooster, and he is like plowing away like a hen. And like, the farm guy who's there is like, embarrassed,
Right.
like he's got the president's wife there, and like this hen is like making all this noise, and this rooster's going after it. And so, she's like, wow. And she's like watching him, and like that, the rooster just like walks away from that hen and just goes after another one. And she's like, this is incredible. And the guy's like, yeah, Mrs. President, it's pretty cool. And she goes, well, how many roosters are in there? And he goes, just one. And she goes, that one rooster, he can take care of all those hens. And you guys are getting a fresh supply of all that. And he goes, yeah, one rooster could take care of it. He'll do them all, and multiple times a day, like nonstop. And she looks at the farmhand and she goes, whenever you bring Mr. Coolidge to this part of the farm, I want you to explain that to him, and explain that rooster has no problem with this, okay? And that he can carry on, and that he has the energy and stamina to do what needs to be done. Would you let the president know that? And the farmer's just like,
Whoa.
yeah, I'll let him know, right? And so, they go on with the rest of the trip. Calvin Coolidge shows up at the same exhibit, and he sees the, hens running around, the roosters, going after him. And so the farmer guy goes, yeah, so your wife wanted me to point out. Yeah, the first lady wanted me to point out that one rooster can take care of them all and does not lack stamina, Mr. President. Her words, not mine. And the president laughs, and he goes, I would like you to let Mrs. Coolidge know that there's more than one hen. I don't know where I got the sound effect from. All right, so what is the Coolidge effect?
Yeah.
So the Coolidge
I suddenly
effect,
have more questions.
No, yeah, that did not answer questions. So it's referred to as the Coolidge effect, but here's what it is. Basically, and it goes back to evolutionary biology. So if a male of the human species has intercourse, okay, and ultimately climaxes and the whole business is done.
Not just human species.
Not just human species.
No.
It can be multiple species. But
This
let's
is
take
seen in
humans.
animals.
Let's take humans generally. So let's say guy has sex with girl, and after they have finished, the old joke is, oh, he's tired, right? He wants a nap and a sandwich. We call that, there's a name for that experience. There's a name for that recharging kind of time where a guy is done. Like he does not want sex again right then, for the most part. Obviously, there's outliers, right? There's people that they can go all day. But, for the most part, most men are done. And that's the joke. Many a comedian has made a joke out of that. Women are like, oh, I could keep going, but he's done, right? That is called the refractory period. And so
I learned about this on ICS.
Yes. Oh, what? I did not expect the end of that sentence.
Yeah, no, they covered this.
Yeah.
Are you serious?
Yeah, so far the only part that's new here is the Calvin Coolidge story.
Okay. All right. Let's see if I can get novel. So the refractory period is that time of recharging or whatever. But what they have learned is that if you bring in a new female, and this will happen in lab rats, it'll happen in humans, but if you introduce them to a new female, like that refractory period is significantly cut down. So it'll go from however long it normally is to half or less. And so basically this male is ready to mate again promptly, and the hormones start firing again, and he's ready to go, has energy and stamina, and is ready to go. And all you did is replace the female. The argument here is that evolution favors that readiness because one male can impregnate a whole group of females, right? And so females have to gestate, they have to, carry the young for a long time. It's not in their best interest to be always ready to go. Whereas for the male, it is, because if your tribe goes to war with another tribe and 80% of your tribe gets wiped out and you're the last dude, the only way you're going to keep your species going here is if you can impregnate all these women and do it promptly, and so like that refractory period, they say, has evolved into males of multiple species to basically, or the Coolidge effect rather, is the cutting in half or less in that refractory period in the encountering of a new female. And so that's what the Coolidge effect is in psychology, is when you expose a male to a new female, his refractory period will be cut down significantly, and he'll be ready to go again.
Wow.
There you go.
The Coolidge effect is attributed to an increase in dopamine levels and is the subsequent effect upon an animal's limbic system.
Yep. So it reignites, and they're just ready to go again. And so it's interesting because Now, humans obviously can utilize this. It's a biohack, right? It's a brain hack. So you can use this if you wanted to. I mean, most humans don't mind, after they've had intercourse or whatever, they're fine. They have the refractory period and it's chill. But in theory, if you study sexuality and you study how humans work, especially males who participate in group sex experiences, will often report that they can go multiple times and they're enthusiastic, right? And there's a high to it, a euphoria to it, and it's like, wow, I'm experiencing something.
Higher dopamine levels.
It's the higher dopamine levels, exactly, and that's the Coolidge effect that's essentially happening. And it wouldn't necessarily happen at home if they were with their regular partner. And sometimes if there were couples that have engaged in group play or have done things like with pornography or other visual aids that bring in another woman, sometimes the primary partner will be upset and will say, well, why can't you do that multiple times with me? Why aren't you enthusiastic about me? Is it me? No, it's not. It's the Coolidge effect. It's a brain hack. So, ladies.
No. It's Calvin Coolidge.
Yeah, no. Honey, you don't understand. I've been thinking about Calvin Coolidge. And then I'm ready to go. Former President Calvin Coolidge? Yes. Nothing gets me on like Calvin Coolidge. So it's interesting, right? Because in real life, experiences, which I don't see people wanting to use this, but let's say they did. Let's say there was a woman who was saying, I wish that we could go multiple times in the bedroom, and, but he can't, right? He's one and done Fred. Well, in theory, you could.
So he could, just not with you.
Yeah, with Calvin Coolidge's wife, he could totally pull it off. He could with you. He actually could with you. And that's what's interesting about the Calvin Coolidge effect, is that if, let's say you were to put on pornography of some kind, seeing the other woman in a sexual predicament would basically reignite the Coolidge effect. The dopamine would fire, and he would actually be able to go again at a faster rate than his refractory period would have allowed it. So anyway, That's the Coolidge effect.
Jacob, please take this back to Ice Cream Social.
You got it.
Guys, I learned something on Pod Therapy.
It is found to a much lesser degree, but it is found in females as well.
Yes. It can happen. So isn't that interesting?
That is interesting.
That was discovered by Grace Coolidge, Calvin Coolidge's wife.
She did find that out.
No.
She found out from that farmhand. Hey.
And his hand.
Yeah. Ow! Ow! Giggity. So anyway, you learned something today, Nick.
So that's what we waited a week for.
That's what you waited a week for, to hear, is about the Coolidge effect.
Also, Calvin Coolidge's wife named Grace.
Yeah, I didn't know that either.
No.
So that's,
The more you know.
I certainly did not look that up while Jim was talking on.
No, everybody knows. I know all the first ladies. Take that however you want. I mean, Michelle Obama and I dated for a while. It's not a big deal.
After Natalie.
After Natalie Portman.
Right.
Which, I try to mix it up.
Right.
So, diverse dating experience.
Very good. All right. Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we'll discuss jealousy. You're listening to Pod Therapy.
This week's TheraProducer sponsor is Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, and since Nathan did not send us a list of demands, Nick and I have a list of demands for Nathan. Demand number 1, we want airplay, underlined twice. Number 2, a helmet filled with cottage cheese. Number 3, a Zahn walnut base with a graphite neck. Number 4, a PRS guitar with a dragon inlay. Number 13, naked pictures of B. Arthur. If you know where the list of demands comes from, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. And you can drop a comment under this episode and let us know that you figured out where it comes from. We expect all this in an hour, Nate, if you ever want these people to be released. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
Okay, we're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about jealousy.
Hello, gentlemen. I am a relatively new listener after my good friend turned me on to your podcast. My question to you is, how do I deal with jealousy after getting back together with my ex? For some background, my ex and I were together for a while, over a year. When they cheated on me, it was hard to take, but I broke it off. I'm still good friends with their parents, so I would see them occasionally. One time, while seeing the parents, my ex was there, and they asked to talk to me. They said they didn't want to live without me and wanted to get back together. It was a long, emotional conversation between us. They know they messed things up, but really wanted me back. I know it sounded a little odd, but I do truly love them, and they love me. So we're willing to give it a try. But I find it very hard to trust them again. The other man, as it were, works at the same place where she does, and they are still friendly even though their sexual relationship ended. Currently, we are working on getting back together, and for the most part, things are going well. But I can't shake this feeling of jealousy and anger whenever I see the other guy, or whenever I think about them together. It really tears me up inside, and I don't know how to deal with that in a healthy way. Is this relationship just doomed to fail again? Or is there another answer? I'm enjoying the show and have a good backlog to catch up on. Thanks so much for your time, guys. Anonymous.
Okay, that's a great question.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one.
I don't know. I guess the thing that definitely makes this complicated, this would be way easier if they weren't still working together.
Yeah, obviously.
I mean, that's the biggest obstacle right there is if I mean, because you can rebuild trust in relationships. That can work out. This has happened before, and people have gotten back together, and it's not anything that's completely unrealistic. The really challenging part, though, is they still have that contact. And unless she's going to change jobs, that's going to continue. And it's not going to be anything that they're really going to have to change. It's going to be something that you're going to have to find some way of coming to peace with.
Yes, yeah. A good book that I would recommend on this subject is by Esther Perel. It's called The State of Affairs. And the book is really powerful. It's about basically how a couple can transcend an affair and come out the other side of that, and what changes would need to happen for them to be sustainable. And one of the things that Perel talks about is that no matter what, the original relationship you had is dead. Whatever comes next is going to be a new relationship. And there's going to be a lot of change that goes into it. But the old one has to die, and you have to let that go. And you have to mourn that and grieve that. Now, in this writer's case, there was that time of breakup. And so there can be that sense that there's a fresh start, a new beginning. I agree that there's a variable here of that person still working there that's really hard. This is possible. So the first answer that I'll throw out there is to the question of, is this doomed to fail? No. Not at all. I obviously, Nick and I are in the wrong business if humans can't change, if humans can't heal. So when this affair goes down, the first thing I need you to understand is that what happened in that experience does not necessarily predict the future. Affair land is where we do have some conflict of therapy paradigms. And here's what I mean. One of Nick's famous quotes is, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. If you listen to that and you don't take this into the deep complexity of what we're talking about, you could just conclude, okay, don't do it, right?
That people never change.
People don't change.
And that's not what the quote means.
It's not at all. It's about not being naive and appreciating that without change-making behavior, nothing changes if nothing changes, right? That's really the point of it. So I want us to be careful because sometimes we can fall into this mindset of once a cheater, always a cheater. That is not true. That is not scientifically true. There is no data to support that conclusion. Why do humans cheat? There's an entire incredible body of work that basically describes why this happens. And the better generality is that humans, for the most part, cheat whenever a relationship ceases meeting needs. And so there's this whole theory about needs. If you go back through the backlog, you're going to get to one where I did a couples therapy session, a mock couples therapy session, Board of Nevada, don't take me down, with Chelsea and Patrick. And we ended up going over this concept of needs, and we actually quizzed them and had them fill out some things on that. We talked it over. So what we generally believe is that when a couple stops having a nourishing relationship, when the ecosystem of the relationship stops meeting needs, if a particular need goes unaddressed long enough, then a member of the couple can become vulnerable to an outsider now beginning to meet that need, or they could become desiring of somebody else to meet that need. And you might think, well, they were having sex, but we had a great sex life, so what's the deal? What need was being met? It might not even be that. Sex could be the thing that happened after they started having a new need met by that person. So I present all that quick nutshell stuff of needs theory to bring it back to this idea of, can this work? Yes, but not the old way. And that goes back to Esther Perel's point. The old relationship is dead, has to die. A new relationship is possible with the same person, but the rules of that relationship have to change. Mm-hmm. The ecosystem of that relationship has to change. It is not possible for you guys to have a future that is not vulnerable to affairs unless you have rebuilt the foundations and you have a new understanding of what are your needs, what are their needs, and how are you both intentionally living into the relationship to meet those needs. Fidelity does not happen by accident. Fidelity is a choice. And infidelity is too, but we tend to just blame this perpetrator and say, oh, they're a monster, they're a terrible person, there's no justice in the world, they broke all their promises. I realize that. But humans are kind of like water. They just find like the place of least resistance and they just go that direction. You have to create an environment for that relationship to be successful. And that's the first thing I would want you to think about is what does it mean to rethink the paradigms of your relationship to make it affair proof?
Yeah, and obviously what we're giving you here is just kind of our take on this. But
Sure.
I think getting into couples counseling or couples therapy is probably going to be the next step.
Yes.
Because that's going to be your couples therapist is going to be your guide to kind of walk you through what this new relationship's going to look like, what this new ecosystem and what these new boundaries are going to be.
Yeah. His Needs, Her Needs, Building an Affair-Proof Marriage is a good book. It's arcane. It does have chauvinistic principles in it and undertones. It's really due for somebody to re-envision it for a modern time. But it is a good standard of work. It's also very religious. But it definitely brings forward at least these first ideas of let's not blame the perpetrator because that doesn't get us anywhere, right? That doesn't solve the problem. There is the ability to move forward. But at the same time, Anonymous, I don't want you to be naive. And I don't want you to just walk back into this because somebody feels sorry. I don't want you to punish them either. I want you to demand a rebuilding. I want you to demand new rules. Now, before we kind of pivot to that, that's my first hot take is that, yes, you can rebuild it. Here's a glimpse of what that might look like. But here's another thing I want to think about. There's another entire body of work by the Gottmans. I forget their first names, but it's a married couple. They're both therapists, the Gottmans.
Fred and Wilma?
Is it Fred and Wilma Gottman?
No,
that's the Flintstones.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks.
Sorry, I hadn't talked in a while. I felt the need to jump
just
in.
to throw that in. So the Gottman Method is sort of the sequential system for how to rekindle and rebuild after an affair. And so if you type in Gottman, Gottman, you'll find quite a few pieces of writing that talk about this. There's lots of therapists that run specialty clinics just on the Gottman Method. But part of what the Gottmans believe, and I agree with them on this, is that after an affair, there must be like robust and total honesty. And so basically there's going to be a season of time where the victim's insecurities and fears and questions need to be answered, and the perpetrator needs to be contrite and transparent and honest. And through that process, there can be a restoration of trust. And when that trust has kind of been restored, then the couple can start growing in a new way. But if you don't go through that purging process, if you don't clean out the wound, so to speak, and have more pain on the way to fixing this, it just kind of gets painted over. And that's when couples develop these deep and lasting insecurities where they're constantly feeling jealous and scared. And that's whenever you start showing up at your mate's work and checking to see if they're talking to that person and going through their phone and feeling nervous all the time. That's not going to help either. And Nick and I have talked a lot on the show about how there's no such thing as relationship defense. You just can't do it. Assuming your partner is straight, there's 4 billion other humans on this rock that they could be sexually partnered with. You can't defend from that many people. At the end of the day, your relationship has to be so attractive and so good that they keep choosing it. That's the only way to defend it.
Yep.
Their names really are Fred and Wilma. No.
Oh,
No.
Damn it. Burned twice on the same bit. I fell for that.
It's John and Julie.
Oh, there you go.
www.gottman.com.
Yeah.
And there looks like they got a blog.
Oh, really good resources.
A lot of tools and services.
A lot of free stuff, a lot of good written stuff. I wouldn't encourage you to bite on their expensive stuff. They have things like huge clinics that they do and conferences.
Right.
I don't necessarily feel like you should go that route. I'm just a big fan of the literature, or even finding a therapist who knows about the Gottman Method and might be using it. But affair recovery, guys, is a big part of what a therapist will do. And so almost any therapist doesn't even have to. Do I think marriage and family therapists are better equipped for this? Generally, yeah. I think it's their discipline.
It's just more training.
I think they have a lot more training and insight in it. But any therapist of any discipline is going to have a lot of understanding when it comes to relationship dynamics, figuring out what went wrong, imagining a solution in which that doesn't happen again. And so you really can't go wrong. But definitely do not proceed unless you do some kind of intensive rebuilding work, whether that's through curriculum and reading, getting a workbook and doing it together, or seeing a therapist to rebuild the relationship.
They do look like Fred and Wilma. No, they do. Wouldn't you say? Does that look like
there
Fred
you go.
and Wilma?
Yeah, Fred didn't have a white beard. He looks like the author of Game of Thrones. That's who he looks like. Yeah, maybe he is. See? Maybe.
So if you want help with therapy, George R.R. Martin is
That's
the leading researcher.
Yeah. You wanna pick up
talk about relationships.
A Song of Ice and Fire. It's really an allegory for how you should have relationships.
You just killed your mate.
The Red Wedding. You didn't see it coming. Spoiler alert, season 8 sucks. So, watch out for that. But great question, Anonymous. And, don't give up on it just because it's already survived an affair. As I said, Esther Perel, The State of Affairs, you can absolutely rebuild after an affair. And in fact, I can tell you this is 100% true. Some of the strongest relationships that I've ever seen were rebuilt on the rubble of a former relationship in which an affair happened. And it's not the same relationship. It is a new relationship. It's a new day. Do not believe that that's not possible. It's absolutely possible. And I believe that those relationships are much stronger for having gone through that. And they learn a lot through the experience. So I'm not categorically against it. In fact, I think you can do some really great work in that.
Yeah. Thank you for writing in, and thanks for being a new listener.
Yeah, hopefully we didn't scare you off yet.
Yeah.
Give us time.
Goodbye. All right, well, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we discuss personhood. You're listening to Pod Therapy. This week's Theraproducer sponsor is Dr. Ben Don, who emailed his commercial this morning, so it is as follows.
How did he write Clear Throat?
I ad-lib.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's artistic liberty.
Yeah. You're doing great, by the way.
Thank you. This episode of Pod Therapy is brought to you by the Iowa renowned roller hockey team rightfully named the Brit Venom. A short-lived but highly successful group of promising athletes formed this team and competed in the highest level of roller hockey that was present in Iowa from the years of 1995 to 1999. You cannot get tickets to this team anymore, but their memory lives on in the hearts of roller hockey enthusiasts all over the houses of the 6 or so members of the team that remember that they were actually on the team. So, as you listen to this week's episode, keep the Brit Venom in your thoughts, and do ask Nick to wear his jersey to one of the episode recordings.
Oh my gosh.
That's from Dr. Ben Don. Thank you very much.
If you'd like to join Dr. Don, you can go to patreon.com/therapy and sign up. Again, that's patreon.com/therapy.
We're back. You're listening to Pod Therapy. Our next question is about personhood.
I think that we should add this jersey to our fictional Pod Therapy merch. I think that we need Brit Venom jerseys.
Yeah, we totally do.
Just Pod Therapy on the back.
Pretty cool looking jersey. We absolutely ripped off the Venom logo from the comic book.
Oh wow!
Yeah, it's exactly that.
Yeah,
we just stole that.
Stan Lee might rise up and take you down, man.
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. For all the money.
Why was it called Brit Venom? Because it's
Brit
as in
Brit is the town.
Oh,
that's the town.
The Brit Venom.
Yeah,
got it. Oh,
yeah.
So it was just the Venom.
Yeah,
you guys were Venom.
Yep,
very cool.
Yep.
So
we ended up placing second.
Wow.
In the Iowa games.
First loser.
In the Iowa games.
That's great. Yeah. The Iowa games? This is like the Olympics?
Yeah. It's like Iowa has this Olympic things. It's the Iowa games.
The roller hockey of the Olympic games.
We placed second.
Wow.
We would have gotten gold, but we got thrown out for fighting.
You know what? Good for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. If that's why you lose, that's a great reason to lose.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thrown out for being fighting kids. How old were you guys?
We were in high school.
Oh, okay.
Well, it was, let's see. High school going into college.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very impressive.
Yep.
On to the letter. Hello, Nick and Jim. I had a second date with a girl yesterday. Way to go! Woohoo!
Rock on.
End of letter. I had a second date.
We're already impressed.
We're already really impressed. What was it like? That's really cool, man. All right. I had a second date with a girl yesterday. That went quite badly. Oops. I probably should have finished that sentence before we congratulated the person.
Oh.
All right. Whole letter. I had a second date with a girl yesterday. It went quite badly. We'd met on the dating app Tinder and had hit it off pretty quickly, exchanging phone numbers, arranging to meet up, texting, etc. The first date was a little rocky, but was quite good, and I left it feeling optimistic and thinking, where could this go? She seemed enthused too. Date 2 was less good, however. She started mentioning dating other guys in the past and how hot they were, and that just made me feel so insecure. It was like my fun part of my brain was just shutting down. I was a terrible date. I feel so inadequate against this unknown other guy, so powerless, like it's obviously not going to work. And then I was trying to be all cool about it, which probably dug me deeper into my hole. At the end, she said she wasn't interested in seeing me again. This morning we had a little text chat where I told her these things. I told her about how I felt intimidated by how attractive she was. She told me about how she'd been talking to her friend and had realized that she'd been a pretty bad date too. Something I hesitantly agreed with, but didn't say to her. She still wasn't interested in seeing me again, however, and it just doesn't feel very great. This isn't an email about a bad date. This is the first time I've felt this feeling of jealousy and powerlessness. Like, a girl I'm trying to date could be with any guy she wants, so why would she stay with me? Taking the thought to court, as you guys often suggest, there has to be something attractive about me. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been a date too, right? But I feel so lost not knowing what that is. Over the last few years, I've read books on dating, spirituality, and other things. I go to the gym regularly. I have nice clothes and a good sense of style. I'm funny. I have a job, etc. But sometimes I feel drenched in this feeling of trying to climb a wall with no ladder, no holds or rope. Atop this, I remember reading a comment on Reddit saying something like, a girl or boy shouldn't be the most important thing in your life, just the most important person. And it led me to worry that my life has nothing in it, like the validation of others is all I have. I know I should expand myself somehow, but I also still want the validation from having that girl, like an addiction, I guess. Can you be addicted to things like this? Even in that vein, the court tells me I'm wrong. I have a good job. I'm learning French. I'm working on a web app project. I make music when I can and have a number of great close friends who love me. I love making people laugh. I dream of visiting the Churn someday and have become quite good at it too. Somehow, though, it feels like this is not enough, or that I'm swimming in the pool next to the ocean. I'm just hoping that you guys could help me figure something out for this. I've thought about going to therapy, but feel like why don't I have a girlfriend isn't really something a therapist should have to deal with. There's people with much more pressing problems than me, and I feel like I'd be taking up space. Perhaps there's a first aid kit before I call the surgeon, or something in between. Thanks for any advice you guys can give. I'm open to any questions you might have, and please give Jacob and the boys my love and appreciation. Brandon.
Give me love, Jim.
I have to. It's in the letter.
Yeah. I'm just going to step out for a moment.
Light the candles, Jim.
So this is a really good question.
Yeah,
I like this. And so one of the things that I'll start off with is, so he's kind of talking about, he's toying with the idea of maybe I should talk to somebody about this.
Right.
But this doesn't seem very sincere, or not sincere. This doesn't seem very serious. So maybe it doesn't warrant a counselor or therapist or whatever. We've actually addressed this question before on the show. And the point that I want to make is that there's no issue that's really too small for a therapist to jump in on. Right. Yes. And I do think the issue is slightly bigger than what you painted out to be, Brandon. I mean, what you're pointing out is you're saying, why don't I have a girlfriend isn't really a good enough reason to see a therapist, but I don't think that's the issue.
Yeah.
Here's one of the things that, I mean, just, and I'm getting this only from this one letter, right?
Sure.
So I could be completely wrong.
As usual.
Typically am, right? But one thing that sticks out to me is it seems like you've got a lot of confidence in a lot of other areas of your life. And I would say you even have confidence in dating. But maybe what the issue is when you get into that situation, it's almost kind of more of like a desperation thing. Like, I really need this to work out.
Right.
Like, and it's kind of like you hold on to it too tightly that it starts, You know, it's like George with the bunnies, you know, and you just want to pet the bunny, but like you end up squeezing the bunny too tight.
Are you referencing of Mice and Men where a man murders bunnies?
Yes.
Cool. Just clarifying. Continue.
But here's the thing. I know that because I can 100% relate to it.
How many bunnies have you murdered?
No, not that part.
Oh.
I didn't murder any bunny that didn't have it coming. No, but I relate to the part early on dating after my divorce.
Yeah.
Because when you're hurt, having a relationship means something that it shouldn't necessarily mean, right? Mm-hmm. You get your value out of that. So then when somebody leaves suddenly, then it decreases your value. You all of a sudden think, I don't have any value, therefore I need to be in a relationship. So you start dating out of a need of desperation because your livelihood, your value of yourself is on the line. So if this date doesn't work out, then I'm worthless. That's a lot of pressure. You should never have that much pressure dating. Once you get to that point where you start having value outside of any kind of relationship, then dating becomes a lot easier because then you can just be yourself. You can relax. And when somebody is on a date and they say something about having dated a whole bunch of hot guys, it doesn't register with you because it's not that big of a deal. But when you're in that desperation mode, then everything means something.
Right.
So that's where my mind goes reading through this. I think there's a lot more kind of going on having to do with value and self-worth, which I think a therapist would be very grateful to work with you on, and I think you would actually have a lot of progress if you address this in therapy. So that's my take.
I want to definitely come back and agree with what you said about. I definitely disagree that this is not something that warrants therapy. You know, and there are things that don't warrant therapy, right? I'm not here to say that 100% of all the things that can happen in a human's life would warrant therapy. Some warrant sitting down with a friend. Some warrant support group, right? Some go in different directions. This is a very fair one. Why am I single and what am I doing wrong? I've had a client come in the last month who have said, I'm here to talk about my destructive patterns of dating and why I keep ending up with people that are not good for me or unsustainable, right? And I want to change me because it can't be that 100% of the people I've dated are toxic and that's just a coincidence, right? Or they come in and say, why I keep going on dates, I can't seem to proceed with anybody. I'm here to get that looked at, right? Yes. Of course, that's where you should go. Where are you going to go? To a dentist? You know, like you got to talk to us about that, right? We're the personality and behavior change people. And so, yeah, if you're experiencing results that you don't like in your interactions with other human beings, it is entirely appropriate to go to a person who specializes in human beings and work on something, right? And get a second look at it. So definitely want to affirm that, Brandon. This is entirely appropriate to sit down with somebody and talk about. It's not as heavy lifting as is other things that we're qualified to do, but this is definitely within the scope of something a therapist would work on. So, you know, that off the top of the bat. I want to come alongside something here and talk about the sense of imposter syndrome or insecurity, right? And Nick, you nailed it, you know, and I appreciate your truth in that anytime you've been, you know, dropped or you've felt like, you know, your own value has been attacked or cheapened, yeah, you're shaken up, you know, and in his case, obviously, after a bad date, you definitely feel that way. But, you know, I kind of pick up at the theme in the letter is also, I feel this way generally. Like, there's this sense of like, oh no, this girl's really pretty. She shouldn't be with me. And there's that sense of doubt, right? I'm okay with that, actually, Brandon. I'm okay with it because it's hard for us to just talk you out of it, right? We can try to pep talk you, and you were doing a good job of that. You're already using skills that we would advise.
There's a lot of CBT stuff already in here.
Yes, taking the thought to court is exactly the way to do it. Hitting pause and going through and analyzing and auditing this feeling to determine whether it's a fact. And you're doing a pretty good job of challenging that. And yet, at the end of the day, what's interesting about this is that it is entirely possible that you could be dating somebody or going on a date with somebody who is more attractive than you, objectively, like more humans would pick them over you, right? And especially, I think this is something that, this is one of the few times that being male therapists is in our advantage. Like, guys resonate with this a lot, where they're like, hey, girls are pretty. And like, they do a lot to make themselves even prettier. And here I am, and I put on a shirt. Like, I showed up to this date, and I'm wearing a button-up, and that was all I did. Right. Like, I don't feel qualified to be here today. And, here's the thing about that. If you're getting to that date, your job is to be the best version of you. If it's not a good match, that may have nothing to do with your human value. And that's the area I want to attack.
That's very true.
Yeah, this has nothing to do with your human value. If it's a bad match, it's a bad match. And they may be more attractive than you. They may be objectively a little bit less attractive. Who knows? But at the end of the day, that's what dates are for. It's an audition of chemistry. It's there to find out if your personalities get along, if you guys have the same kind of interaction. Especially in this case, Nick, because they met on Tinder. You already know what you look like. That part of the vetting phase has been done. That part's done. You already know what the other person looks like, and you chose to go on a date with them. But feeling inadequate to be a part of that date is where I want you, and this is one of the few times that I'm going to say this, I want you to fake it till you make it. And here's what I mean. I don't want you telling your date, even after the date, that you felt intimidated by their attractiveness and that you felt like you weren't good enough to be in their presence. Here's why I don't like that. There is a pattern in male behavior sometimes to be overly revealing and to try to elicit pity from females. Yep. And it's because women are generally known to be more empathic and warm, and because they will generally feel the need to reassure you and say something like, no, you're not ugly. No, it's not that. No, you totally be with a girl like me. And that gives you some of what you were hoping for, which is validation. But this is, you've so left the trajectory that was going to lead to a relationship, and now you're in a whole nother sandbox, which will self-perpetuate insecurity and not be good for you, Brandon. And a lot of men do this. It's not just you, buddy. I've had a lot of men that do this. Very common. And every woman listening to this can think of a time a man's done this. It's very common, but gentlemen, listen to me. That's not the right way forward. Now, listen, I'm good with you having insecurity. I'm good with you talking about having insecurity. I want you to talk to me about that. I don't want to talk to her about that. I think, Jim, what about authenticity? What about transparency? What about revealing your truth?
Later.
Now's not the time. Because she doesn't have the medicine that you need. And she's going to feel like she's got to be kind to you and boost you. And this is now taking you away from being viable to her. And I've seen very few relationships form around a nucleus of pity. That doesn't work very good. It's not good for you. I want you to just go in there, confidently be the best version of yourself. And if you walk out and you get back to the locker room and you feel like you didn't play a good game on the ice, that's all right. Let's talk about it on the sidelines. You don't tell the press.
And this,
tell us.
Exactly. And this is why my early dating was so tragic.
Oh, really? Did you do this?
Pretty much, yeah, pretty similar. And it's because women don't want to be with somebody that they feel like they have to emotionally take care of.
Right. And if they do, that person probably also has some stuff.
Exactly. Then they've got a lot of stuff
they've got to nanny you. That's not good either.
Yeah. And so once you start getting to a point where you no longer require that right up front, then you know that you're okay and you can take care of yourself. That's what, like, women are way more attracted to that. Dating gets a lot easier after that.
They are attracted to it, and it is good for your self-esteem because now we have what's called a feedback cycle. And listen, guys, when we're talking about relationships, a lot of rules start to get contradictory, right? Because you usually hear Nick and I talking about being, courageously honest and transparent, things like that. But let's not pretend like human mating is not an audition process that has a lot of complicated aspects to it, right? That's there.
Speaking of which, it's funny because we were just having this conversation last night at dinner, Laura and I, and we're talking about how many industries would go out of business if we weren't trying to impress the opposite sex.
The diamond industry tomorrow.
Everything
would be gone.
Everything
There's
would shut down. Everything would shut down.
Florists.
Hygiene products.
Yeah.
Think about I was actually thinking about this. I was thinking about going if you were to go through your budget and look at every item that you spend specifically to attract another or to maintain attraction to a member of the opposite sex.
Yes.
That's like 90% of your
Oh,
budget.
it's huge. It's huge. You know, there is a theory that
I only have a house because I think it will help.
Because Laura wouldn't hang out with you if you lived in a box.
I'm perfectly fine.
I could live in
living
the park.
behind a dumpster. I'm perfectly fine with
There's
it.
a lot of soft grass in the park. It's not that cold in Vegas. I'd be fine. Yeah, no, you're not wrong. There's a theory that civilization itself was only created because it facilitates attracting mates. That like people build buildings because they're hoping a chick notices, or women, go out and excel because that would at the end of the day be attractive, that they're confident and self-sustaining. So I don't know if I agree with all that, but I do think that there's an important point here, which is that the wrong answer to this question, and the answer you did not hear from Nick or I, Brandon, we did not say, "Oh, buddy, the only opinion of you that matters is you," and you know what? Don't listen to the haters, and no. We didn't say that, right? Because we respect your intelligence enough to know that we're talking about a practical thing. Getting out and dating, how do I attract a mate? And so in the course of action that precedes getting a mate, there is this portion of pep talk, being the best version of me, cleaning up, polishing up, going out there, trying my best. Choosing to be artful, I think, and tactful about what information I reveal and what information I don't. And at what phase of our connection between two humans, it's proper for me to reveal things like that, right? Like, I've had my wife for 13 years. If you ask her today, was I intimidated whenever I first met her and thought she was way out of my league? She'll say, yeah, I know that story. Because I've had this woman locked down for over a decade. I got 2 kids with her. She ain't going anywhere, all right? I can tell her now. But, like, if you'd have asked me in the first month of dating her, she'd say, yeah, he's really confident. Like, oh, yeah. I don't think that he's intimidated by me at all. I'm lucky to be with him. Yeah, that was a scam. That's a Ponzi scheme, man. I inflated the value of that currency until I could get her. But, that's not to say that dishonesty is the way to go here, Brandon. The thing is, I don't see that being a helpful way. Now, let's talk about you. We've commented a little bit about your dating strategy, and we've had some thoughts on maybe some things we could have done differently. And that's us sitting with you in the locker room, buddy, and watching the game tape and saying, hey, here's where you got blitzed on the left. Here's what you could do differently. And that's also what a therapist would be doing with you, is they'd say, hey, let's walk me through it. And I'll tell you, here's things I want you to do differently next time. And let's practice, right? And here's things I want you to be looking for and go with or whatever. Did you notice the date was going cold early? Okay, start to detach yourself. Right? Don't double down. Don't try to dive in after her, right? Pull back. It's not going well. Don't take that as an indictment on self. Take that as poor chemistry and pull back, right? So we would give you some of those psychic defenses to reframe what's happening live so you can get through the date and ultimately feel like this is not who you are. It's just bad chemistry.
Yep.
Which is a very fair part of all this too. But let's talk about that sense, Nick, of when he says, you know what? I'm scared because I have like this deeper insecurity. Am I giving too much power to what a person thinks of me, right? He said, is it possible to be addicted to a person? He said he read on Reddit that it's dangerous for a person to become your be-all, end-all. And he's saying, yeah, gosh, that is dangerous. And I feel that I'm vulnerable to that kind of thinking, of giving a human too much real estate over my identity and my human value.
Yeah, relationships are kind of those things where if you're not enough without one, you'll never be enough with one.
God. Damn. We should copyright that.
Well, I actually stole that from the movie Cool Runnings.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
When does that happen in Cool Runnings?
Because they was talking about winning a gold medal. And the coach was like, if you're not enough without a gold medal, you'll never be enough with one.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, most of my therapy stuff comes from movies.
Cool Runnings.
Well, not Cool Runnings specifically.
Feel the rhythm, feel the rhyme. Get on up.
It's bobsled time.
Cool Runnings!
Oh, yeah. Nothing gets people more motivated in therapy than that.
When I throw out Cool Runnings quotes. I like that in this episode, we have had a conspicuous amount of 90s movies quotes.
Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
But that's really, man, that is a good line. I'm going to use that.
Yeah.
So in a and I think that
Thank you, John Candy.
Thank you, John Candy. He gives us 100% of all the things that we've learned. Greatest professor I ever had, Mr. John Candy. I think that there's truth to that. I also want to be careful not to disqualify that as human beings, you are evolutionarily wired in some ways to feel validated from the tribe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That
yeah.
other humans give you validation.
Being part of the tribe is part of survival.
It is.
Right?
It's in your best interest.
Yeah.
Having a mate, it perpetuates the species.
Right.
So it is not a surprise to me, Brandon, that you don't feel good whenever humans of any gender or any variety of any interest level are in any way showing you non-affirmation or not electing you. And I want us to have a broader view of our reality, you know, to sense that everybody has a tribe. I have to find my people, right? And that's one of the things I think that we've talked about with Ellie a few weeks back, and what she was going through being a person who is trans and finding her people and also appreciating the value of support and of human contact. And in your case, that's the situation too, is that it's okay to find my people and to know who they are. And if I'm out there dating, the danger of dating is that audition process. It's a binary choice, yes or no, again or no. And that's the high stakes reality of it. Whereas friendships don't have that. Friendships can be like, I don't want to see this person, and then we meet up at a Chili's and whatever. Yeah, I'll see you again. It's fun. But dating has this high risk. It would be false, however, Brandon, for you to take that high risk nature of dating and imbue your own human value with that binary choice. That would be inaccurate. It's not true. And I don't want you to think that way.
But yeah, great letter. Thank you for writing in. This was...
That's a really cool one.
Yeah.
And good luck.
Really, write us again. Give us an update.
Get off of Tinder, Brandon. Tinder's not where you find somebody that you want to be in love with. Oh, wait. Isn't that how you found Laura?
Fuck you. This is where I wish...
That was a real moment right
there. It's a good thing Laura stopped listeing to the podcast.
That was a real moment for all you listeners.
That was not scripted.
Yeah.
I would recommend apps like Bumble. A lot of people tell me Bumble's really good. Grindr's a great way to find a nice young lady. I hear about this app called Hinge. I'm told that Hinge is a little bit more interactive and a little less hookup-y. I hear of one called Coffee Meets Bagel, and that one is a lot lower stakes, and it's more like people get together for lunch. And then there's a service called Just Lunch. It's Just Lunch, and that one's interesting because you actually get interviewed by a human, and they match you up with humans they think
that one's
would be a good
expensive.
pairing.
I know somebody who was on that.
Oh yeah, I've heard that it's like $1,000 or something.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
I use Farmers Only.
Yeah, well, obviously, if you're into the kinky stuff, that's what you do. You know that, but we all know where that leads. Rolling around in a hay bale. So anyway, Brandon, thanks for writing in, brother, and I'm glad that you're taking a look at this. Don't be afraid to connect with a therapist, man. This is exactly the season of life that they could be really, really helpful in.
Yep.
The last person I found on Farmers Only was a little sheepish.
Oh!
God, he's just been on fire.
I heard
today.
she was a heifer. Come on, Nick, throw one out there.
I'm not good with comedy.
That last one was Nick's swan song. What's the matter, Nick? Chicken?
It's just animals. You just have to pick an animal.
All right, well, hold on. I'll write some down. I'll come back next week.
That really got Jim's goat.
Damn, he's good. It's so fast. I can't keep up with it either. I don't know what's happening.
Naming animals.
You sound a little
and
hoarse.
And implying that I'm having sex with them. That's the bit, folks.
That's the bit. These are the jokes.
Oh, my God.
So anyway, this is what we do.
All right. So it's time for announcements, apologies, patrons, so on and so forth.
Yes, announcements. When you are hearing this in the first week of June, even though we are taping it at the end of May, I think we can say with confidence that the Kickstarter failed. I think we can say with confidence that the Kickstarter failed. And so, because we talked about it for a whole month, it would be improper for us not to address it. And our feelings regarding it. Does it hurt a little? Yes. But just like with Brandon, where we have to know where our value is accurately, we know that even though our Kickstarter failed, that does not mean that what we do is not valuable. It just means that the assholes on Kickstarter didn't appreciate us for what we're worth. And that's okay.
Or they did, and that's what we're worth.
Or they did, and that's where we're at. That's okay. What do you say, Nick? It's just feedback.
Yeah, exactly.
So we gave it a run, but that's okay because the show goes on and Pod Therapy is still very much going to continue. And again, I guess we just want to even more so thank all of our Patreons who continue to support us, and our show is fully financed. We're able to do our show which is great. The Kickstarter was really just an idea of increasing output and doing something new, but this allows us to do a whole new thing, so we really appreciate that. And the Patreons matter more than ever.
You want to know? You want to know what the I think the most for real the most positive feedback from the Kickstarter campaign was?
What?
Have you looked at it lately? This is I'm being real. The most backers you have, the level that you have the most backers at is the $100 level.
That's true. That is true.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
So the people who backed you on Kickstarter, for the most part, the vast majority of them backed you at the $100 level.
Wow.
Yep.
Thanks, guys.
Yep.
More than half of your backers backed you at $100 level.
Yes,
That's
it's true.
amazing.
So of all the support we got, it was mostly at the $100 level.
Now, in fairness, they may have been assuming that you weren't going to make it.
Yeah,
And we're
I
gonna
think it
have
was
to
one
pay
of
out
those
that
things where
$100.
you can just place the bet. It's like, you know what? It'll be fine. There's no way these guys pull through.
I'll
It'll
take
be
this
great.
bet.
I'll take that action. I will take that
For
action.
instance,
honestly,
I backed
though-
you at the $6,000 level.
I have no fear.
Maybe our mistake was asking for $100,000.
Yeah,
Maybe that was our
looking
mistake.
back, maybe that goal was a bit ambitious. Maybe I should have dialed it down a notch.
But honestly, though, I think I think what I learned from this, though, is that we just need I want to get more listeners. I'm not so concerned with the dollar amount at this point.
No.
At this point, we make enough to cover what we do, which is great. We don't really make enough to send out merch and get that started.
Well, dude, we have some great
We're getting
T-shirt
close.
ideas. The Venom,
Yeah.
the Brit Venom
Well,
jerseys,
right.
the WWJD bracelets. Some great ideas. Got some solid ideas here.
We'll get there.
Yeah, we'll work
get
our way up to it. But no, you're right. And I think that the way that I have learned that you grow your audience, in my personal opinion, as a podcast listener, I have discovered new podcasts through podcasts that I listen to. And so a guest will show up and I go, oh, that sounded nice. I'll follow that. And then I go get it. Or I interact with humans and they tell me, oh, do you like podcasts? Here's some that I listen to. And they'll tell me about it.
Yeah.
And then social media teaches me because somebody I follow will retweet something from a podcast I'd never heard of. And I go, oh, well, let me check that out. What is that? So I think that's the way we do it. And, you know, we've been doing a really good job on it. You know, we've been on other shows. You've been on Gruntworks.
Yep.
We did Opening
Fan
Arguments.
Theory World.
Fan Theory World. So, yeah. So if any of you out there know of a podcast that might want to be friends with Pod Therapy, send them our way. We'll be friends with them.
Mm-hmm. We need friends.
We need friends. We all need
So,
friends.
we want to thank our Patreons.
I want to thank our Patreons, and since it is the first week of the month, it is time to thank all of our reptilian special forces, the three-toed members of the Therapeutic Alliance, the THERAPODs. Thank you to Betsy, Blaine Maurer, Brad Kefauver, Brian Lehman, Brooks Lyle, Chelsea Seresin, Corey Owens, Curtis Kiwi Fruit, Dan Martin, David Pollock, David Younce, Easy Whip, Fred Bashara Jr., Gavin Bristow, Heather Psychotic Scoop. I'm just here for the Alex Jones Lot Awful Movies. Came to us for Opening Arguments. Jackie and Dustin, a.k.a. Scoopy and the Beast. Jessica Vint, which is also Scoopy Jess. It's funny because as I'm reading this, I only have access to like the first two words in their Patreon. So if they have longer than two words, I can't see it. Joseph Pangrazio, Carrie Terhark, Lori Eltsroth, because she doesn't like the maiden name. Got it. Leon Kassab, also known as the first lawyer ever to appear, let the record so state. Linda Brandmeier, Lindsay Bashara, Lindsay Borders, Manuela Musacue, Melea, Mike, Peter Van Pelt, Richard Bruins, Scoop John B., whose Twitter's on fire, Scoopaholic, Scoopiter Ascending, Scoop Stronad, 49th Frozen 49th Scoop, and Tracy Replogle, a.k.a. my mom. However, I feel that there are some who have been left out from that, and I feel that my filter changes did not go through. So while you are reading our TheraProducers, I am going to double-check my math on this.
Okay, well, you have my script, so let's see if I can do this from memory.
Whoa!
Thank you. From, Smitty Scoop, Jake Schneider,
Robert
Brownie Jr. meant, Kyla Lansbury,
David
Scoop
Violon.
Violon, Judy Schneider, Nathan's Hot Dog Scoop, Dr. Ben Don, and ex-officio board member Ellie O'Daire. Did I get them all?
I think you did. Dude, that's really impressive. That's a really good job.
Yeah.
Okay, so I found
I don't
Blue
remember
Scoop.
my address.
Yeah, no. Not at all. I definitely found Ice Blue Scoop on here. That was one.
And congratulations to her and
then there's
St.
Kate
Louis
Keller.
Blues on making it.
Yes. Oh, huge. And I'm totally rooting for the Blues.
Yep.
I'm ready for that. Kate Keller, I didn't throw her in there. I think I just updated it. Double checking, triple checking, quadruple checking.
This is great podcasting.
Quinceañera.
Stick with us.
Robert Paulson. Ha-ha! There was another one that
yeah.
got away. All right, Robert Paulson, Scooper Ascending, Scoopstronaut, Scoopaholic. Okay, I think I got them all. God, I hope I got them all. If I didn't, I blame technology because the Patreon didn't want me to.
And our lack of preparation.
Oh, definitely not that. We've done nothing wrong. If you would like to have your name read theoretically and be thanked on the show, if you would like to access the extra content that happens on our Patreon, such as our awesome book club where we are reading Maybe You Should Talk to Someone by Lori Gottlieb. And if you'd like to join the party, you can join us at patreon.com/therapy and sign up. And again, guys, I want to thank all of you so much who have just supported us on this project. You guys are the real ones, man, and we love that you guys love what we do, and it's really made a difference. And before I kind of thank everybody officially and move to the outro, I just want to point something out, that in May, one of the most meaningful things that happened, we had lots of good letters, lots of people write in, lots of people, asking sincere advice and looking for real help. A story that I did not tell in May, but now that we're officially in June, I can tell, and I feel comfortable telling it. A 14-year-old girl wrote into our show and asked, remember this?
Yep.
And asked us, hey guys, do not read this, but was feeling depressed and was feeling suicidal. And she didn't know how to ask her parents for help, and she didn't know how to talk to her parents, and she was scared of what might happen if she did. And she wrote in asking us for help and asking us how she could talk to her parents about getting therapy and where she could find that help. And for us, that was very meaningful. It gave us nothing to read on the show, but that's what we are here for. And so we were able to write back to encourage this kid, to tell her how to find help, to talk about what she was going through. And we wrote her a long reply and ultimately taught her, here are some references and here are some things you can do to get help. And she wrote back and said that she was moving forward and that she was going to get help. And so I just want to point that out, that, you know what, this project can be silly, this project can have a lot of fun, and hopefully we're succeeding at destigmatizing mental health, and hopefully May was a month that we did, move the barometer forward in some ways. But for me, I'll never forget the private email from a 14-year-old kid who was in danger.
Yep. And
our ability to just give her something and point her in the right direction. So for all of you who support us on Patreon, it is because you do that we were able to be available to do that, and that kid ever found this show and was able to ask that question. So thank you guys for what you do.
Absolutely.
Thank you all for supporting mental health. That's all the time that we've got for this week's episode. We want to thank our landlords, the Ice Cream Social Podcast, and thanks to those of you who contributed to our show today. We really appreciate it. Remember, Pod Therapy isn't something you should keep all to yourself. Help us reach others by opening this episode's description in your podcast app and copying and pasting the link provided into your social media. Don't forget, you can find us at facebook.com/podtherapy, on Twitter @PodTherapyGuys, and now at patreon.com/therapy.
Do you want to submit a question to the show? You can ask anonymously at podtherapy.net or email us at podtherapyguys@gmail.com. I'm Nick Tangeman.
I am President Calvin Coolidge.
Thanks, and we'll see you for appointment next week.
Ladies. That's what I require my wife to call me in the bedroom.
Ladies? You ever
Mr. President?
Who was it? Dimitri Martin.
I love
comedian.
Dimitri Martin.
He made a joke that